Opinion video. This time the topic is why certain labels put out so much shitty music or shitty albums as they usually is. Now, a lot of you know that I do review albums almost on a daily basis. Usually apart from weekends when I'm at work, I'm just listening to albums and reviewing them. Now, beyond review albums, I obviously have a little bit time for something else. Usually this time, however, goes with digital promos or just something that I want to listen to for leisure. But we're not here to talk about my leisure albums. We're here to talk about the albums that I listen between the review albums, the ones that I dig up on my computer, so-called digital promos. Now, a lot of promotion these days obviously happen via digital ways. Why do I spend my time with them on top of the physical ones I get for review is very simple. I am there to dig the next dragon. You probably are familiar with the saying chasing the dragon, and that's what I'm doing. I am, how to say, almost desperately trying to find the next dragon, the next album, the next band that is going to be something magnificent. It doesn't have to be big, of course. We're not here talking about the next Metallica or Iron Maiden, or even in the extreme metal sense, we're not talking about the next Dimmu Borgir or Mayhem. We're talking about the band that needs more attention, something that I want to feature on the channel. So I go through a lot of digital promos on the top of the physical ones. Usually it means I go only through some few songs and then move on. By moving on, I mean I simply delete the bad ones, the so-called rotten apples, and then I take the next one. But why do I choose only certain albums to go fully through? The reasoning is very simple. There's so much new music coming all the time. I mean, on daily basis we get dozens and dozens of metal albums. Since I'm limiting myself here only on metal albums, it's pretty easy to just, you know, limit the ones that are not exactly my cup of tea and not even download them to begin with. I did that before and suddenly my digital promo folder was something like hundreds of promos because most of the time was spent with the physical ones. So I don't really have the time, the luxury to go through all of them like from start to the end and then figure out whether I want to keep it or go on with it. Nor there's reasoning. I mean, imagine yourself listening fully to some albums which you think are pure and utter crap. No, no, no people should do that. Focus on the good stuff. I mean, I already spend enough time with some mediocrity when I'm doing the physical things. But that's something that I've chosen to do because I want to do those reviews. And luckily most of them are at least, mediocrity or lukewarm, not so much like utter shit. But I can tell you this much. The world beyond physical format, it's a dirty one. It's almost like this. Some people say certain platforms on social media are the gutter of internet. It's like the, sewer pipes. And you're just like, that's where all the garbage goes. Then there are platforms, even big mainstream ones, which are beyond that. I mean, some people say, yeah, you cannot say things like that on certain platforms, be it Instagram or Facebook or whatever. And then you're like, yeah, but it gets worse when you go on Twitter or beyond. Now, this metaphor here is to kind of point you out something rather obvious to me and probably a lot of review people, but not so much maybe people who don't really spend their times with, um, promotional material. And why so? When you're bound to go with your own choosing, like whatever you use, YouTube, Spotify, physical media, doesn't really matter. Then you kind of know what you want. You already go for the good stuff because that's what we're supposed to do, right? Listen to some good music. Listen to the music that we already know we'll like. It could be our favorite bands, anything from Marduk to Slayer, from Metallica to, I don't know, whatever underground noise project you have going on. If you like it, you're gonna play it. It's that simple. For review people, it's different. Some people who work for, say, magazines, they get their picks already pre-selected by themselves, or in some cases, editor-in-chief, saying like, you are going to review this because you're the power metal guy. So here you have these few CDs or whatever digital links. And the people are like, okay, fine, I'm gonna do these 5 CDs or 5 digital promos, whatever, and that's my review batch. And then you move on. For people like me who are kind of bombarded constantly with new CDs from various parts of the world, but usually more on the extreme metal side, as you know, a lot of the stuff I review is black and death metal. It's a little bit different. So I don't even nowadays open the promos when I see, okay, this is metalcore band, because it's not something that I'm going to like. There's no point for me to go or real negative or spend time with music that is out of my comfort zone. So yes, I do comfort zone thing when it comes to beyond the physical format. But I'm not, like I said, listening to only my physical or favorite bands. So whatever the media is, I just still go to a lot of promos. Now to get to the actual point, with it is that when you go in the world of digital promos, that is the gutter, because a lot of that is way worse than those even decent mediocre CD ones. I'm not saying the format itself defines what is good or not, because obviously that's not the thing here, but there is clear saving point between these two. Now, physical media, first of all, it costs way more money. I mean, even though technically speaking, printing a CD is relatively cheap, considering that whatever mixing, mastering, recording process you might have had, even choosing the cover layout and all that stuff, that's actually the bigger price point thing. That's where the money actually goes. But of course, releasing music on digital format is already by that point relatively cheap. It's almost easy. Like there's actually nothing but the promotion where you use PR agencies or might as a label have your own list and then you do your own promotion. So that's a relatively cheap part or totally free of charge. Which leads to the next problem is that once you don't really have to invest that much money on digital promotion, you can pretty much just throw out some shit and see if it sticks. Like, hey, we have a pile of crap here. Pfft, that didn't stick. Okay, the next pile one. And then you go on as long as it needs. Now the question is, why do bands actually keep releasing that? The answer is fairly simple. If you have any idea of running a business or you have been part of a business, that is, you have actually worked in a business, for example, importing company or warehouse or whatever, you already know that there's a lot of products going on in and out. That is, in order to make the business going, get your paychecks done and all that stuff, you actually have to buy and sell products. This means, in essence, that in order to keep the company running, you have to sell stuff all the time. But imagine if you're a label that releases only, say, a couple of albums every year. Now, to a certain degree, you might keep up the quality all the time because you could say, like, no, we're not going to release 99% of the bands that we're offered to. We only pick the gems, the jewels, and all that stuff. But you only get to sell these stuff to a selected few distros. I mean, after a while, they're already stocked. So if you have, say, this first album of the year, then you sell it to a certain amount, and then the labels like the distros, the record shops are like, okay, we already got our stock full. Let's first sell this next Vatine album, and then we're gonna purchase some more. And they are like, okay, see you in 6 months when our next album is coming out. And then you release the next one. And you once again, okay, you had Vatine in the spring, now we're selling you, say, this new Dissection kind of a band. It's good, okay. So once again, the distros and record stores are like, okay, you really do good stuff. Well, what you are gonna do for the next 6 months? Wait for another jewel and gem to come and then start selling. That's kind of a dream come true situation. That you could just twiddle your thumbs for the next months or just scout for the bands to be actually really, really good. But that's not the reality we live in, because it's not like you only have to pay for the warehouse rent or your own paycheck or whatever running costs you have only once in the 6 months, right? So in order to keep your company running, and now I'm telling you the very, very basics, which I think a lot of older people already know, but youngsters maybe not so much. So in order to keep your company running, you have to keep the flood going all the time, every fucking month, probably even on a weekly basis. So you cannot wait really 6 months for some really, really good band to come. And by the way, there is no guarantee that every 6 months you are going to find a good band. Maybe it takes 5 years. So in order to keep your company running, that is a record label here, you have to have kind of a sell products which are subpar in quality. So in essence, you're making compromises, even if you're convincing yourself like, yes, this is another 9 out of 10 quality band, while it's not. And you keep pushing that kind of crap stuff, maybe because you believe in your naivety, in that like underground thing. This is not about profit. This is not about commercialism. This is not me selling out. But you have to have that bread, that butter on your bread, right? You're not just gonna go for like, okay, I don't know what else to do. Now there are labels which are not run by professional methods. That means these people do that only as a hobby and they have a real job outside. They can do that kind of a compromises because they don't have people on the bill. They don't have to pay them. They don't maybe even have a warehouse except on the back of their own garage. And as garage label, it might even work that you just release an album every 3 years and focus on the quality. I'll tell you this much. Bands are not interested in small labels if they're really good because they're going to be picked by the more commercial, the bigger labels. So you have this question now. Do I want to be a real label that actually puts out albums constantly and helping me to make my living? Or do I want to be the garage level band that only gets those shitty applications by shitty demo bands and all that stuff? Now, if you opt for the one that you're like, hey, it's going to be my real job, a company that I own, a company that I will bring to the future, just release good stuff all the time. Now, you have to make these compromises. So first you end up doing something like, this is pretty decent. Let's say it's 7 out of 10. It's pretty good. People gonna love it. When they go on tour and all that stuff, it's gonna help me sales with the shirts, with the CDs, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of a nice by this time. But the more and more you do that, unless you're a big ass growing company and everybody loves you because you're a cool person, a cool label who doesn't do compromises, etc. And you're a business genius on some levels, relatively speaking, you're probably gonna be bound to have these compromises. And that's when you end up releasing really, really kind of a subpar albums. I'm talking about the ones that are 6 out of 10, 5 out of 10. Maybe not absolute crap like the digital promos, which are more often horrible, but that's another topic. But you end up doing these kind of crappy ones, the ones that nobody really gives a shit, like some 10th generation version of Nordic black metal done in somebody's garage by somebody's bedroom black metal project with a drum machine, poor understanding of production, shitty vocals, horrible lyrics, and with music that nobody gives a shit about. Not even you as a label guy, because you're just releasing that very generic black metal release or that whatever boring heavy metal one you have out there just in order to keep your company running because you want to avoid bankruptcy. This is a very legit reason to do stuff. You don't want to go bankrupt, lose all your money and warehouse and belongings and put all your legacy with the work, you know, in the garbage bin. You want to keep your business going. I mean, I totally understand. That's why people have work in order to pay the mortgage, get food and all that stuff. But that's also the reason why a lot of labels seem to put out crappy stuff. Even the labels that seem like really cool ones. Now, I'm not going to do name calling for a couple of reasons. First of all, I don't want to start any kind of a underground war here. Secondly, obviously I don't want to shoot myself in the leg and like, okay, I mentioned this and that label and now they're gonna hate me, never send me anything and all that stuff. Now, actually there are labels which don't send physical copies, so technically speaking I could do that. But like I said, this is not about insulting certain companies, only to explain how they do and why they do it. That's more important really rather than how. And I don't know if you really paid attention, but back in the days, there were certain labels that were known for quality. Earache, for example, back in the 90s, they were known for doing good metal stuff, death metal stuff especially. I mean, you had bands like Carcass and Bullthrower, uh, Napalm Death, Cathedral, stuff like that. So whenever you saw an earache release, you were like, yeah, it's going to be cool. It's going to be the next Entombed one, which was reality. Um, then you also had labels like Moonfog, run by Sather. So back in the days when you saw a new Moonfog release, you're gonna know it's gonna be something interesting in terms of black metal. Trust me, he actually had a really, really good label, and Moonfog was more or less kind of a sign for quality, at least to a certain extent. But nowadays there are lots of bands, even run by some cool metal people, I mean band people, who actually know their shit and they're making compromises. Like this label might have, say, first 5 releases really good, and then it starts kind of like, oh shit, why they're doing with this, and it makes me, to question the whole value of this given company. Now there are labels, and this is the only bit of name calling I'm gonna do on top of Earache and Moonfog are labels like Northern Heritage, which never actually failed to release certain kind of quality. I'm not saying I have everything by them in my record collection because I do not. There are something that I don't consider high quality ones, but still pretty goddamn good. And then there are labels which have absolute the best kind of stuff, 5 out of 5 star material, and then a lot of that stuff which is hardly 6 out of 10. The point being, once again, you have to keep your company running, and because of that, you also make a lot of compromises or sacrifices. So, if you have ever wondered this, maybe not a lot of people haven't, but this is the reality we live in. So, underground, mainstream, or something in between, indie, if you will, it's in fact happening. And I'm sorry to say, but this is the reality. Like it or not, bills have to be paid, and most of us, at least, require something else than just butter on the top of the bread. And that's how the things keep going. Now, I don't know what about you, but time to move on for some reviews. Looking forward to hear your comments and thoughts about this. Do you know a label that's only pure quality, or is it more like the other way, more like quantity over quality? Looking forward to hear from you about shitty labels, about the good labels, or if you have run a label and you know certain secrets that you want to share because you failed or because you succeed. I don't know. Let me know. And thanks for watching the video. See you soon with more opinion videos coming your way.